Hello and welcome, guys. Nice to see you online. Who have we got? We've got 84 YD2IY. Long live Khalistan. Harjit Dugal. Welcome. Nice to see you guys online. Thanks for joining us live today. Okay, let's get underway. We've got a lot to get through this afternoon. So, indeed, yes. Hello. Welcome back to Perspectives. And on today's show, we've got 4 stories spanning 3 continents. Don't say we don't bring you the international stories. Hi there, I'm Ripal Singh. Nice to see you. We're going to start today in Canada, where the RCMP has just warned 2 Sikh activists that their lives are in danger. A warning that lands with real weight, given what happened to the last man who held one of their specific roles. I'll talk about that more in a moment. And from there, we're going to go south of the border, where new FBI data confirms something that the Sikh community in America has been saying for a while, that hate crimes against Sikhs are indeed rising. Not just rising, they're rising sharply. Then we'll zip across to Punjab, where an Independence Day protest in Chandigarh turned violent. Yes, I've got more footage of that. Police used drones to drop tear gas on a crowd for the first time in the city's history. And one of Punjab's best-known political figures was arrested after disguising himself as a hospital patient. And to close tonight, a genuinely nice story. A young Sikh man has just made history in the skies over Britain. So do stay tuned for that. All this and loads more on today's show. And of course, at the end of the show, we'll take a look at loads of great comments as always. So thank you as always for those. Right. As I said, lots to get through today. Let's start off in Canada. This is quite concerning, really. This is just come out in the last sort of 24 hours or so. And it really is, it's an important story because of clearly what it implies. So the 14th of August, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RCMP, issued what's called a duty to warn letter. That's a formal notification that police are legally obliged to give someone when they have credible intelligence that that person's life is in danger. And these duty to warn letters have just been issued to 2 Canadian Sikh activists. They are, the first is Inderjit Singh Gosal. He lives in Caledon in Ontario, and he's the Canadian coordinator of the Khalistan referendum campaign. Obviously, the campaign that we talk regularly about. In fact, in yesterday's show, we talked at great length about. And the second person is Manjinder Singh of Abbotsford in British Columbia. Now, the RCMP has told both men that the threats against them were, in their own words, credible, serious, and imminent. So it's pretty serious stuff and very worrying for those 2 guys. And the letters advised caution and offered police assistance, but as is pretty standard in these cases, it didn't disclose where the threat information came from or what form the threat might take. So again, it's exactly the same here in the UK. These duty to warn notices, they're issued in exactly the same way. They just tell an individual, your life is in danger. We can't tell you from whom. We can't tell you how or why or any details other than that your life's in danger. I mean, thanks for that. But anyway, so it's pretty serious stuff. And it's worth understanding really what a duty to warn actually is, because it's not something that Canadian police or even any police, whether it's in the US or here in the UK, it's not a sort of thing that they issue lightly. It is a legal and ethical obligation. And the same principle exists in policing, as I say, right across the Western world, that kicks in specifically when those authorities have credible intelligence, real, genuine evidence that names a person and a threat to their life. And it's no general security advisory. It means someone somewhere has intelligence suggesting that these 2 named men specifically are in danger. So what's interesting though, and again, equally concerning amongst all the context of this, is the job title of one of those individuals, the Canadian coordinator of the Khalistan referendum. Now, that might ring a bell for many of you guys for a very grim reason, because the last man to hold that role was Hardeep Singh Nijjar. And of course, Hardeep Singh Nijjar was then shot dead in the car park of his Gurdwara in BC in Surrey 3 years ago. So it is very, very worrying. The man himself, Hardeep Singh Nijjar. So, and that killing, as many of you remember, triggered a genuine diplomatic rupture between Canada and India. And Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister at the time, he stood up in the Canadian Parliament and said Canadian security agencies had, quote, remember the words, credible evidence linking agents of the Indian government to Bhai Najjar's death. India, of course, rejected that outright. They said it was absurd. And then relations between the 2 countries have been pretty frosty ever since. Well, since Carney took over, things might have changed slightly. But anyway, what Canadian authorities have subsequently pursued is a different but related thread. And they've linked the killing of Najjar to an Indian-based organised crime network run by two men, Lawrence Bishnoi and Goldie Brar. And Bishnoi, as we all know, is currently imprisoned in India. And in July this year, the US Department of Justice then charged him with ordering Najjar's assassination under that Operation Hardball that we've talked at great length about. Now, so where do things stand? Well, Canadian authorities say that they found no direct evidence tying Indian government officials themselves to the killing. But, as they keep saying, they are actively pursuing the organised crime angle, and that prosecution is very much live. So it's also worth knowing that the Bishnoi network has been linked by Indian and international investigators to a whole string of other high-profile violence, well beyond that simple case of Bhai Najjar, which, of course, gives you then a sense of just how far its reach is said to extend. And if you remember, there was that statement made by one of the representatives of the organisation, we have 1,500 guns for hire in America, or words to that effect. So ultimately, when the RCMP turns around 3 years almost to the month after Bhai Najjar was murdered, and then has now just told the man who's now doing his old job that his life is now under credible, serious and imminent threat, well, you can understand why that is so significant in the Sikh diaspora in Canada. It's, again, it's no idle threat, this, because it comes with a very, very scary track record. And unsurprisingly, there is a political dimension to this too, which is worth talking about. CBC, when they reported on this story, they framed it as another duty to warn letter that cast doubt on current Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney's attempt to rebuild relations with India. Now, CBC, they've been very good about all this whole diaspora transnational repression situation. They've always reported on it. They've reported on it fairly. They've done some fantastic investigative work. And they, of course, have been there on the ground grilling Carney's government and his representatives really to the point of discomfort about this whole issue of not just Bhai Najjar's murder, but the whole ongoing transnational repression. And yet, Carney's government has been trying so hard to normalise ties with Delhi, arguing that the worst of the Najjar era tension is behind us. It's over. So, and yet we've just had these duty to warn notices just issued in the last few hours. And it's actually, and CBC, it's a second such warning that they've reported on recently. They also covered the fact that UN investigators separately urged Canada to step up protection for another threatened Sikh activist, Maninder Singh. Remember I reported on that just a couple of weeks ago. So even the UN has said to Carney's government, your Khalistani activists are genuinely under direct threat of their lives. You need to protect them. So again, in the context of this, two new duty to warn notices just issued to two other Khalistani activists. And Canada's own Parliamentary Intelligence Committee has in the past named India specifically as one of the states engaged in foreign interference and, of course, targeting of dissidents on Canadian soil. Manveer Singh, welcome. Nice to see you on the show. So it's not a one-off. It is a pattern, as we keep saying. You don't even need to join dots here. The pattern is plain as you can see, as the hand in front of your face. And it's the pattern that keeps landing very uncomfortably for Carney's government that's trying desperately to move past it. They are still, at least publicly, in denial of it. And the World Sikh Organization of Canada has itself publicly said that Carney's government needs now to heed these warnings and stop downplaying them. So it's also worth knowing a little about who Inderjit Singh Gosal is himself, this guy who's taken over what was Bhai Najjar's role. He's no peripheral figure in the Khalistan movement. He's pretty high profile. He is the Canadian coordinator of the Khalistan referendum. And so effectively, he's that public face of the campaign in Canada. He's the person whose name and contact details are attached to organising all the referenda that's been going on in Canada. He's the same public-facing role that, as I say, Bhai Najjar himself held before him. And that is precisely why this threat against him carries so much weight. It's not anonymous. It's not some sort of diffused concern. It is a specific warning to a specific individual now doing the job that got his predecessor murdered. So again, this is why Carney's government needs to get off their political backside and do something about this. Gurbachev Singh, welcome. Thanks for joining us. So interestingly, on the very evening that this story broke, it was 10 o'clock on the 18th. It was last night at 10 o'clock. I think it was UK time, 10 o'clock, that this story broke. The FBI pretty much instantaneously put this up. This is the FBI's Washington field office. They put up this post on X. It wasn't explicitly about the Canadian case, but the timing's a little bit interesting, isn't it? And it read, and I'll quote it directly, "Some foreign governments seek to monitor, scare, or harm their citizens who are visiting or living in the US. These crimes, known collectively as transnational oppression, violate US laws." And it then gave a phone number and a website to go, for you guys to go and report it if you see it. So this is the FBI on the record naming transnational oppression as a real and current concern. And it's worth knowing that the Sikh Coalition, that's one of obviously the major Sikh civil rights organizations in America, they've been doing dedicated work on exactly this issue for a long time, publishing its own research and submitting that testimony and evidence to Congress on this very specific issue. So, in other words, this issuing of the 2 duty to warn notices, it just issued last night in Canada, it's actually not just a Canadian story on its own. It is a live cross-border theme on both sides of that border, Canada and North America. There is no way this was a coincidence that the FBI issued this warning to American citizens. So, in other words, be alert, be aware. And Mark Carney, as I keep saying, really needs to step off his political podium and wake up to the fact, because God forbid, if anything happens to those 2 guys, then blood will be on Carney's hands. And we all must hold that man accountable, because it is in his remit, his responsibility, and his moral, political, legal obligation to protect those 2 men with the full force of the Canadian nation. And even the FBI, wading in as well on the whole subject. So Carney's public denials to all this are absolutely unacceptable and unforgivable. He has got to start calling India out, because these duty to warn notices and all the other evidence piled up are a mountain of proof to Carney behind his blinkers that it's real and it's happening today. And that he cannot keep shaking the hand of Narendra Modi whilst this is going on his own sovereign soil. So, talking which, I'm going to move on now to the States, and it sort of segues quite nicely into this. It's about the safety of the Sikh community in the States, specifically, obviously, in America. And the numbers, talking about the FBI, come from the FBI itself. The Sikh Coalition has actually just reported this recently. It's a serious, well-established fact that hate crimes in the US are a huge thing of concern for the Sikh community, not just the US, obviously, all the other diaspora areas. Mr. 403, nice to see you online as well. If Carney is being purchased by India, maybe it's better for US to invade Canada. Well, I certainly couldn't endorse that, but I dare say there is definitely some positive points to that, certainly. So here in the UK, there's actually, interestingly, in the UK, there are many people, and I've said it myself quite publicly, if Trump's America decided to invade the UK, I would not resist. Because frankly, I have that little faith in our own government. And if I was a British Sikh, I would actually feel pretty similar to that comment. Actually, you'd probably get better protection under Trump than you certainly would under the current British government. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent there. But it is related. It is actually related to this story. So as I was saying, the Sikh Coalition has just published its analysis of the latest FBI hate crime data. And the headline is really, really worrying. Anti-Sikh hate crime has risen 25% from 2024 to 2025. That's up to the latest official figures. So it's risen 25%. That's up from 142 recorded incidents in 2024. And the coalition's own analysis found that anti-Sikh hate crime actually peaked in September 2025 with 26 incidents in that single month. That's nearly 1 a day on average. And September 2025, if you remember, is the month right after that high-profile trucking accident in Florida, when that Sikh truck driver, Harjinder Singh, generated that huge amount of horrible, racially charged commentary online at the time, because sadly people died in that tragedy, and it was a Sikh truck driver. So clearly that has driven this hate crime. So the coalition, Sikh coalition, has also made an important point that is actually worth talking about. And they believe it's very likely an undercount. In other words, these figures are highly likely to be underestimated. We know this because, as I've reported here in the UK, we have exactly the same issue. And no doubt, wherever you guys are in the diaspora, you'll have the same issue. Of course, these numbers, these official numbers, will be an underestimate. The FBI's data only reflects what individual law enforcement agencies have chosen to report. And a significant number of agencies right across America either report zero hate crimes every year or simply just don't submit any data at all. In other words, of course there's hate crimes. They've just not been reported. And some states clearly are just not even bothering to do it. Because participation in this FBI program, this crime reporting program, is voluntary. So local police departments, wherever you are in the States, are not obliged to report. It's not mandatory for them to report hate crime figures to the FBI. And of course, that, unsurprisingly, it's this long-standing criticism of this whole system in the US law enforcement system that's been criticized all the way from civil rights groups across many communities, not just Sikhs. So it is no doubt that the true figure of hate crime in the US will no doubt be massively higher than that, as it is here in the UK, based on the hate crime statistics here in the UK, and likewise Canada, everywhere else. So ultimately, it's not just the Sikh coalition that's making this claim in isolation. It has actually apparently been independently picked up by the Times of India, no less. I mean, yes, okay, Times of India, clearly part of the Godi media, but even they've picked up this story, I think primarily because they see Sikhs as Indians, so they see it as Indian hate crime. That's probably why they've picked up on the story as well. But ultimately, yeah, they report on the same facts. So in other words, essentially it's an independent confirmation, even from India, that this issue has broken into Indian mainstream coverage as well. That's how significant it is. It's not just a Sikh story as well, because no doubt the figures will be reflected on the Indian diaspora, not just the Sikh diaspora as well. So, and a number of outlets have actually covered the wider FBI hate crime statistics too. Axios have said hate crimes across both Latino and Sikh Americans hit a record high in 2025. And PTC News, another outlet, cited data suggesting hate crimes against Sikhs have surged 3,700% over the past decade. And that is a headline I actually reported on, I think, a few months ago, when, again, figures, well, I think I last looked at these figures, because the FBI actually does keep an online database, this sort of ongoing database of these figures. And that 3,700% increase over 10 years is shocking. But as I say, I did pick apart those figures and I analysed them, partly because it's actually due to an improvement in reporting statistics, but there is still an underlying trend of rising hate crime. So WHO Panza, look at the FBI data on screen, only 32. So where's the case for Hindu phobia, and why does HAF and Carney exist? Well, yeah, I mean, we all know the answer to that one, WHO Panza. Of course, Hindu phobia, the Hindutva lobby are so desperate because, of course, they're so much on the back foot now that the truth is sort of coming out and the West is starting to waken up to the truth about India and what it really represents, and the Hindutva and RSS forces behind it. Of course, they've got this massive propaganda push saying, oh, it's Hindu phobia, it's we Hindus who are the victims. Do me a favor. So do watch tomorrow's show. I'll talk about the RSS a lot in tomorrow's show. I've got that lined up tomorrow. And of course, the RSS's Bhagwat Man, his imminent visit to the West. I'll be covering that in tomorrow's show. So do watch that anyway. So yeah, you're absolutely right, WHO Panza. The propaganda coming out from the Hindutva forces is risible, is the word. It's laughable. So anyway, but as I say, that 3,700% it's a staggering number, and it speaks to how far hate crime, even taking into account the ability to report it much easier now, even taking that into account, how much this trend line is racking up and how concerning it really is. So it is very worrying. And it's also worth being, sorry, if I just zipped, I won't come on to that. I'll give you a sneak preview of the next story. Hinduphobia is fake. this channel is itself at times propaganda of Hindu phobia. I wouldn't agree with that, Hobo. Hindu phobia does exist. There is an element of Hindu phobia, but it is minimal. It is minimal. And if you watch the show regularly, Hobo, you'll understand the evidence that I present to prove that it is minimal and is used as a weapon. You see, the sad tragedy of all this is there are Hindus who are genuinely attacked in the street in the same way that Sikhs are because of being Indians or Hindus or whatever. And that we all abhor. We all totally reject that. I equally reject that as much as I reject hate crime against Sikhs. So it exists. But the point is, and the danger is that Hindutva are weaponizing it. They are weaponizing it to use against their opponents, primarily the Sikh community. And all that is doing is undermining the good work that law enforcement and politicians are trying to do to prevent genuine Hindu phobia, because it loses credibility. If you fake it, you generate fake statistics upon which the wrong policy is made. So actually, Hobo, unfortunately, Hindu phobia is real, but it is not as bad as it is being made out by Hindutva. And that, ironically, is self-defeating, because Hindus are equally suffering as a result of that, because it means wrong policy is made, which also generates in itself Hindu phobia. It self-generates Hindu phobia. So anyway, that's just hopefully to address your point, Mark. But ultimately, I say hate crime. And what is hate crime? I mean, it sounds abstract, but of course, there's a lot of real thing. Yeah, there's a lot of realistic action behind hate crime. And the Sikh Coalition and many other groups have documented over the years what forms it can take. And it literally can take anything from being online to physical violence in the street. Usually, when it comes to Sikhs, it's usually targeting the dastar or the beard, obviously the most visual signs, the most visible articles of faith marking you out as a Sikh. They're not fashion choices, they're articles of faith. So verbal harassment in public, at work, vandalism of gurdwaras, this massive undercurrent, in fact, not even undercurrent, this massive barrage, this tsunami of online abuse that quite often spikes around unrelated news events that happens to a Sikh individual, whether it's the trucking industry, Henry Novak, all that sort of stuff. There's sadly too many examples of it. And it's those sorts of things, quite often unconnected news stories, that can actually trigger a spike in hostility towards Sikhs. Specifically, if there is any connection in any even indirect way, it triggers particularly the right wing. It gives them an excuse to start attacking Sikhs. And this is what Sikh advocacy groups are saying. Look, this is the most troubling and persistent feature of this data. So it is a genuinely different kind of story to obviously what we've been talking earlier, because that specific targeting of those two Khalistani activists is, as I say, it's very targeted. It is a very targeted threat from a foreign state. But what this is about is its everyday lived experience of just ordinary Sikhs going about their everyday lives, whether it's in America, Canada, US, wherever, or the UK. The data suggests that it's getting worse as well. This is the concern, is it's not getting any better. It's getting worse. And it doesn't matter where the hostility is actually coming from. It's just generally this blanket or is an increase in hate crime is something that must be addressed. But it can only be addressed if the statistics are reported properly. And it doesn't matter here in the UK, America, wherever in the world in the diaspora you are, you must always, always, always please report the hate crimes, however minimal, because unless law enforcement can collect this data and collect this data correctly, nothing can be done about it. If they don't know you've been attacked, they can't do anything about it. Avatar Dylan, hello. Nice of you to join us. Thanks again to see you again. Nice to see you again. So I want to now just do a huge leap. Mr. 403, what you just said. This Mohan character once said in his speech, anyone who's born in India or lives in India is a Hindu. Yeah, I mean, that is the RSS through and through. That is pure blood RSS rhetoric, isn't it? And if anybody's got any doubt about the agenda of the RSS, I think that statement makes it absolutely clear. W.H. Panzer, so do you think Hindu phobia exists with 32 in all of US with population of 458 million people? Yeah. Okay. So if you actually look at the statistics compared to the whole population of the United States, I mean, with statistics, you've got to be careful. You could prove anything with statistics, but you're absolutely right. Relatively speaking, Hindus probably suffer less actual targeting than Sikhs do, primarily because Sikhs are so visible with their articles of faith, and it does attract attention. So anyway, but yes, actually, thank you for that. So, okay, yeah, I want to zip across to Chandigarh. I did mention this. Was it earlier? Was it Monday? Oh, no, it's Tuesday. Tuesday, oh, yesterday, yes. Gosh, it's all a blur. I did actually report on this on Tuesday when we talked about all the protests over the weekend, because, of course, there were massive protests all around the world about Indian Independence Day. And, of course, the Sikhs, wherever they were around the world, were out there in force, making their voices very much heard, making their Khalistan flags very much visible. And in Punjab, of course, the guys in Punjab, as I said yesterday, the courage that they've shown to take to the streets once again, really, is laudable. It deserves credit for actually standing up to this nonsense oppression that Delhi just will not relinquish. It's terrible what's going on. But anyway, as I say, I've got some video, and I'm going to show you some video of this because it's great to see. The protest, was it Mohali? I think one of you guys said yesterday it was Mohali, and it was just outside Chandigarh, and I think it is Mohali. Police apparently used drones to drop tear gas on the crowds. And apparently this is a first for Chandigarh. I do remember seeing this. Remember when we reported on the farmers' protest in 2023? It was the second farmers' protest, not the original ones, 2021 and 2020. The 2023 farmers' protest, which sort of went on almost into 2024. I showed videos where, again, they were using drones to drop tear gas canisters onto the crowds. Terrible, really. And apparently they used it in Chandigarh, on the protests in Chandigarh over the weekend for the first time ever in Chandigarh. And you think, the urban buildup, it's an urban area. So again, this isn't out in the sort of the open road or near the border areas. This is in urban areas where, even innocent people are going to get caught up in this. So August the 17th, 2 days after India's Independence Day, supporters of the Qawmi Insaf Morcha, which is, I think it roughly translates as the National Justice Front, they took to the streets, well done to these guys, and they tried to march into Chandigarh in defiance of orders, these prohibitory orders that had been issued by the Indian government. And apparently, according to the Tribune, actually, as they reported on it, they said that the police responded with multiple barricades, anti-riot vehicles, and water cannon. And that is true, because I'll show you the video. You can see it for yourself in a moment. And it was pretty brutal. Again, it was just typical Indian government or Indian police force response. And some protesters at Sector 51 and 52 did try to break through those barricades. And according to the Tribune's reporting and some other outlets, apparently some of them were carrying their kirpans and axes and spears. I have to say, in the footage I've seen, I've not seen any. Actually, that's not true. I think in this video I'll show you, I think there was one guy carrying his kirpan. So, but again, you always got to be a little bit careful when we refer to facts in the Godi media. But ultimately, police in response apparently then use these drones to drop the tear gas shells directly into the crowd. And as I say, apparently it is the first time that this has been seen. Now, the details of all this, one of the people apparently, this is where it starts getting really weird and quite interesting. Simranjit Singh Mann, the chief minister, sorry, not the chief minister, he's the chief of the Shiromani Akali Dal. So one of the people at that protest was the man himself, Simranjit Singh Mann, the chief of the SAD in Amritsar. He, of course, is a former member of parliament. And he's someone who's obviously been a fixture of Punjabi politics for a very long time. And according to the Tribune and other sources, apparently he tried to get round the security cordon around Punjab Lok Bawan, by disguising, I'm chuckling because it's great, by disguising himself as a hospital patient. And apparently he wrapped his head in bandages and parts of his body, and he sat in an ambulance, and again, just as a disguise to try and get round the law enforcement and all the cordons, the security cordons that were trying to stop anybody getting to Chandigarh. Sadly, it didn't work, though. He was detained. They recognized him. They detained him. And I think because of his age, he was released without formal arrest. And an FIR, a first information report, has been registered, though. So Gurmeet Singh, Khalistan Zindabad, nice to see you online. Welcome for joining us. But apparently, anyway, so Simranjit Singh Mann, his son also was there, but unfortunately he was not quite as fortunate. So Ayman Singh Man, that's Simranjit's son, and he lives in Fatehgarh Sahib. He was, as I say, not quite as fortunate. He was one of 8 who was arrested near Punjab Lok Bawan, because I say these protests were all over the region. So well done to them all. So, but apparently in total across the day, police arrested 21 in total with the arrest, including senior Qaumi Insaf Morcha figures Bapu Gurcharan Singh and Laka Sidana. And then another 9 people were then arrested in Ludhiana, specifically on weapons charges, which is interesting. As you say, Avtar Dylan, if there's a will, there's a way. Indeed, these guys haven't just got a will. They are motivated by the fire of lions, these guys. As I say, I'm always very complimentary of these guys who have the courage to take to these streets and just take on this brutality of Indian law enforcement. But anyway, I'm going to show you. Let me play this video in the background so you can actually see what went on. I'll just quickly sort of talk about this. There's the water cannons, and this guy. Look at this guy. I mean, the courage again in the face of those water cannons are brutal. They will literally knock you off your feet. The power of those things. This guy jumps up on the barricade, waving his stick. I think in a second you'll see him about to use it like a harpoon. Is it going to? He's joined by somebody else. Here you go. He's about to launch his stick. As I say, it looks like a harpoon or a spear at the police. There's a load of police officers down below. Unfortunately, I think he had common sense kicked in. He sort of thought maybe not such a good idea. Ultimately, they are there protesting, but they're not there. They're not killers. They're trying not to be violent. They are essentially being a democratic protest. But again, you've got to take your hat off to these guys facing that water cannon, which in itself is absolutely brutal. And the police, those barricades, again, totally, the sort of things that we're actually, it's rare to see this. The last time we saw anything of this brutality, actually, as I say, was a farmers' protest. That's not strictly true. There's been a few other protests like it. But of course, then the CJP protests, they were equally brutal. And in fact, at those CJP protests just 2 or 3 weeks ago, they were using the pellet guns. And in fact, somebody turned up with an AK-47 as well, with live rounds as well. So this is, this is Indian democracy in full force. It's pretty appalling, really, isn't it? So ultimately, why were people so angry that they were willing, to there's the guy with his kirpan. There you go. Look at that. Fantastic. And the defiance of this, as I say, the kinetic energy of those water cannons is absolutely enormous. That's why they're used. And that guy just stands there with his kirpan being absolutely battered by it. But he was giving no ground. I mean, there is a true Singh there, a true lion standing his ground in the face of the Indian water cannon. So well done to you, mate. Fantastic effort. Really good effort. Anyway, but yeah, ultimately, why were they willing to bring the kirpans and their anger to the protest and also to defy this prohibitory order? Well, of course, the answer actually takes us to what's happening in a couple of days' time. This Friday, the 21st of August. The Qaumi Insaf Morcha has now called very publicly for a Punjab-wide ban. That's a general shutdown, where businesses, transport, institutions are all going to close down in protest. It's basically it's a shutdown. It's a general strike, effective in all but name. And so on Friday, the official demand of this strike, this general strike, the Banda, is to demand the release of the Bandi Singhs. Again, it's all about the Bandi Singhs once again. Of course, the Bandi Singhs are those poor, elderly now Sikh men who were imprisoned during the 80s and 90s, during the terrible times of the 80s and 90s. They were imprisoned. And of course, they've completed the prison sentences that they were originally handed, but remain in custody in prison still now, even well beyond their release date. They're still not being released. So it is, of course, a long-running cause in Sikh politics. It's something that is often referred to as the Bandi Singh Rihai movement. And as I say, it's been going for too long. Actually, it's an outrage in any democratic nation that those Bandi Singhs still remain in prison. But interestingly, this whole thing on Friday, this big thing that's happening on Friday, this band, actually has a lot of institutional weight behind it, because the SGPC itself, the Shiromani Gurdwara Parliament Committee, obviously that really important committee that is responsible for all the Gurdwaras around the world, and of course carries a huge amount of authority, not just in Punjab, but of course globally. They formally backed Friday's band as well. So the SGPC are behind it. And its president, Advocate Harjinder Singh Dhami, has said that the organisation has been making, in his own words, continuous efforts for the release of imprisoned Singhs. So they totally endorse the actions that are going to happen on Friday. And in fact, the SGPC has gone as far as postponing its own internal committee meeting, which was scheduled for Friday, to the following day. And that in itself, and again, they don't do things like that lightly. So it's a genuinely significant institutional statement from the SGPC, because, as I say, it doesn't reorganize its own governance calendar for causes that it doesn't take seriously. So again, you get an idea of just how serious this is. And in fact, actually, there you go. That's the PTC News reporting that. And going back to the Bandi Singh cause, of course, it's been simmering in Punjab politics for years, and it does keep resurfacing, as it has again now, whenever there's any sort of fresh flashpoint that gives it renewed energy. So it's great in many ways that the Sikh community are using any flashpoint, like 15th of August is a prime example, to remind the whole of India, and indeed the world, that the Bandi Singhs are still in prison. So they're utilising, they're leveraging the motivation, the anger, the power in these protests to then also funnel it towards this whole cause as well, the Bandi Singhs cause, which is totally the right thing to do, because we must never forget, as indeed we must never forget the Shaheeds and all those who gave their lives in the cause. But these effectively they're not Shaheeds, they're almost like living Shaheeds. They have lost their lives and their time with their families and living their lives in freedom by being imprisoned by India. So effectively, they are, with all due respect to the Shaheeds, they are almost living Shaheeds. They have martyred their lives, their freedom, in their cause, which again it's so undemocratic, the fact that these guys still remain behind bars. It's absolutely outrageous. And the core grievance from Sikh organisations is it's all about fairness. It's not even the rule of law. It's about just simple fairness. It is obviously about the rule of law, which India seems to disregard at any given moment when it suits it. But it's a fairness argument. These individuals have served the sentences that the courts gave them. Even if they were guilty of the most heinous crimes, whatever that they were charged with, they've served their time. They've done their time. But being kept in custody through other dirty tricks, other legal mechanisms, as the Indian state keeps doing, is effectively amounting to indefinite detention by the back door, like there's been happening to Amritpal Singh Ji, to Jaggi, and many others, their colleagues likewise, who are in this legal limbo, deliberately kept in prison through the abuse of the Indian legal system by the Indian government. It is absolutely appalling. I have to say, it's pretty unforgivable. So anyway, so do keep an eye on Friday, because of course, hopefully that's going to be quite a big day in Punjab. And it will be interesting to see what comes out. I'll keep an eye over the weekend. And if you guys see any coverage or see videos, even pictures, news stories, whatever, anything that happens on Friday of this sort of band, this general strike in Punjab, please send me an email or even put a link in the comments below. It doesn't matter. But just let me know, just so at least I know what's going on, because it's very, very hard to get the truth out of Punjab because the Godi media try to suppress it. Any bad news that happens in India, certainly it happens in Punjab, there's bad news for the Indian government. They do their absolute best to make sure that news doesn't get out to the wider world, which is why social media is so essential. And you guys are so important to get that information out, particularly if you guys are in the Punjab. I know that we do have some Punjabi viewers. So if you guys are there and you know what's going on, you hear what's going on Friday, please send some footage. Just send me an email, even just a few words, whatever. Anything that you hear, just let me know, because it's you guys that need to feed me this information. So anyway, I want to finish today on a nice story. We haven't done a nice story for far too long. This is a really lovely story, this guy, Flight Lieutenant Arshdeep Singh Dang. He's 28 years old, is a young lad, looking very proud there in his RAF, his Royal Air Force uniform. He's originally from Chandigarh, and he's just made history here in the UK. He is now the first Sikh to earn fighter pilot wings in Britain's Royal Air Force since the Second World War. And he graduated during a fast jet pilot ceremony at RAF Valley in North Wales on the 14th of August. So it has been even covered by mainstream Indian outlets. Clearly, it was the Week and which other one? It was the Week, the Tribune, and a few others. They even covered this in Indian mainstream. It's interesting, isn't it? How India always co-opts successful Sikhs for their own. Oh, he's an Indian. Suddenly he's an Indian. He's not a Sikh, he's an Indian. It's interesting, isn't it? How India, the Gaiety media, does that when it's convenient for them. But anyway, that's another issue. Let's not stay in this lovely story. So this guy, well done to this guy, Arshdeep Singh Dang. Flight lieutenant, to give him his full title. He to achieve this in itself is a huge achievement. I know how hard. I was never tried myself, but certainly when you read and you watch any media about how hard it is to become a fighter pilot, it is extraordinarily difficult. You really need to be the top of the game, physically, mentally, everything. You know, there's no room for failure in any way, shape, or form. So to achieve his wings like this young lad has done, it is a fantastic achievement. Sikh pilots have actually a huge history, and certainly in the Allied forces. In fact, actually, I think it was 2 world wars. We had the Flying Sikh, and maybe I'll do another story about that. But certainly, here we go. This is from the Second World War, and was a couple of Sikhs in this. The others are Indians, I think. There's a couple of Sikhs there. And because Sikh pilots served with absolute distinction, as they always do, without exception, in the RAF, in the Royal Air Force, during the Second World War itself. And it is a history that's well documented and, of course, rightly celebrated within the community. But since then, this specific milestone, a Sikh earning fighter pilot wings, actually hasn't been repeated for 80 years until now, until this young lad done it. And it's worth remembering that being a practicing Sikh with a turban and, of course, a beard, you can imagine, we've talked, again, on many shows about the issues of serving in law enforcement, in the fire services, on the front lines of any of these services, the issues with respirators, gas masks and stuff like that. And in the military, you imagine being a fighter pilot. To be honest, I actually don't know how this young Singh has got round the fact being a fighter pilot, because they wear these enormous helmets and this incredible sort of headgear. Basically their whole heads are encapsulated in equipment and gear. So I actually have no idea, and maybe I'll have to try and get him on the show or something. We'll have to find out how on earth he does it. But again, you've got those sorts of challenges. So he hasn't just got the challenges of getting through all those incredibly difficult tests and things to pass to become a fighter pilot, to achieve his wings. He also has got the physical issues and the logistical issues of wearing a dastar and, of course, being unshorn with all the equipment as well. So again, I've absolutely no idea how it's got around it. So again, a story like this, it's not just about individual achievement, actually. It also reflects institutions like the RAF, I have to say, you've got to pay tribute to the service as well, continuing to work out how to properly accommodate Sikh personnel in all the services, whether it's Navy, Army or Air Force. And it does make this milestone matter in more than just one way. And the story has been talked about in the community really positively, which is great to see. Paranjit Singh Sarna posted that Dang's achievement is, in his own words, I'm just quoting from one of the social media posts that came up, a powerful reminder to Sikh youth that there are no limits to what we can achieve when we combine discipline, courage, education, and my favorite word, chardi colour. So ultimately, the community has absolutely stepped up and said, fantastic, well done to this young guy. Let me show his photo up again, because he deserves the publicity. As I say, an exceptional achievement. So our huge congratulations out to this young lad. Who's, as I say, I take my hat off to this guy. Arshdeep Singh Dang, that's his name. Flight Lieutenant Arshdeep Singh Dang. So congratulations to him. Hobos, you're right to say, Sat Sri Akal, and a huge well done from all of us to him for his great achievement. We look forward to a long, distinguished career in the Royal Air Force. But of course, contrast that with the US military and all the issues which I've reported on in the past. I'm not going to talk about that at length now, but just put this in context to Pete Hegseth's attempts in the United States military to force Sikhs either to shave or to get some very hard to obtain exemption to allow them to keep their beards, which is a real retrograde. It's a backward step in the US military, which is a great shame. But here I know in the British Army and obviously the RAF and certainly the Navy, we welcome Sikhs. And the greatest sadness, I think, both to the community and to myself personally, I think the greatest loss in the British Army is we no longer have a Sikh regiment. And I think that is an outrage. We've got a Gurkha regiment who serve with massive distinction. So why can't we have a Sikh regiment? Because we had Sikh regiments in the Second World War. They served with massive distinction. They were some of the most fearsome, well medalled, if that's the right word, well awarded regiments in the British Army, and indeed in any army, because of their heroic deeds in the face of the enemy. So again, it's a great shame we don't have a Sikh regiment, and I think we should still keep campaigning for a Sikh regiment. So whenever you get the opportunity, mention it. Anyway, let's move on. Gosh, 15 minutes left. Let's go on to our, I think, yeah, that's the end of our news stories. Let's go on to our comments, and loads of comments from you guys. Thank you, as always, to your efforts and your contributions, as always. WHO Panzer. Yes, the spray was laced with chemicals. It was not straight water only. This chemical temporarily blinds the eyes. This is interesting, WHO Panzer, because I could not corroborate this. I did see this. Somebody had actually said that apparently they'd laced the water can with chili. So, of course, if it gets in your eyes, you ain't going to see for quite some time. You're going to be in pretty miserable state for a long time. So it does appear the rumours might have some substances. There could well be some sort of chemical. Sorry, it's actually still playing. There you go. So it is quite possible that those wretched police officers have put something nasty in that water. It's not just straightforward. It's not just a kinetic weapon. Effectively, it's a chemical weapon. Let's call it for what it is. If there is any chemical other than H2O in that water cannon, that is chemical warfare, and thus banned under the Geneva Convention and just about every other convention that exists in international law. So that actually, it does open up a whole can of worms. It'd be very interesting to talk to some Indian lawyers about that if it is proved, and it's very easy to take a sample, if it is proved that water contains something nasty in it, I think, it's mega pepper spray. I think there is a legal case there. Not that you would win in India. You can't win any case against the Indian government in India. But there is a legal case, and certainly something to go to the United Nations. It's more evidence to put to the Khalistan cause. This is what the Sikh community are facing. They are facing chemical warfare by their oppressors. Again, it's a massive legal statement and genuine evidence that supports the case. This is why we need to break away, because this is how they treat us. So anyway, but thank you for highlighting that point. It's absolutely right. It is very concerning. Harjit Dugal, nice to see you again. Congratulations, brother. Always being chardi colour. Absolutely. As I keep saying, it's always my favourite phrase. Chardi colour. I love it. Right. Comments. Yes, we did. This is after my podcast with Dr. Gray on last week. We talked about Dr. Ambedkar, and it was, the history. I would say it's fascinating. I'm not always too interested in history, but the history of India and the history of partition, the history of the Sikh Empire is fascinating. It is obviously very tragic, but laced through that tragedy, there's a huge amount of heroism as well. But in amongst all the politics of 1947 and the arguments and the division of Punjab and the tragic massacres, the carnage, the genocide that occurred around 1947, Dr. Ambedkar was very much sort of embedded in that whole negotiation of that whole time. And ironically, as I didn't know this, but as we have subsequently discovered, it's the Dalits in India, but particularly the Dalits in Punjab, have suffered most of all because they, under the Pune Pact, just got absolutely shafted, to use a colloquial English phrase. Basically, got betrayed originally by Dr. Ambedkar, who then realized the mistake he'd made. Basically, they thought, oh, great idea. Let's give Dalits a certain amount of guaranteed seats in Parliament. But of course, the problem with that is that meant that's the maximum they could ever get, which meant, even though the fact that they are the most numerous caste in India, they can never then become the government because they can only win a certain minority number of seats. So even if they maximize their guaranteed seats, they would then have to fight all the Hindus and upper caste and other people to win more seats to become majority, which essentially has become impossible. So ultimately, it means that the Dalit community and Dalit political parties can never effectively govern India. And this is the great betrayal, which even Dr. Ambedkar himself realized subsequently. This is a massive mistake. But the irony and the paradox in the podcast that we talk about is the Dalits themselves are the ones actually fighting to retain it, trying to retain the outcome of the Pune Pact. which actually is keeping them democratically trapped in a minority. Anyway, but you have to watch the podcast to understand the details of that. So, but anyway, DTST has actually been very, very active. And in fact, I'm trying to think which direction to go with DTST, because he's been very active in all sorts of different directions. And there was a little bit of, the word is contrition. And I use that word respectfully, because DTST did realise, I think, was it in yesterday's comments? It did say, look, sorry, I made a comment that actually I didn't really mean. So he retracted. And I'll always respect anybody who apologises, or even indirectly apologises. So, but anyway, but DTST has been very forthright in our comments. So thank you, DTST, for all your contributions. This comment was, look, the world doesn't care about Khalistanis. The French have banned turbans in schools. Canadians rejected Khalistanis, according to a CNN report, and dissidents have been extradited from Switzerland. Well, actually, Vienna is in Austria, but anyway. Hello, Sikh Jedi. SJ has joined us. Hello, SJ. Nice to see you. Welcome to the show. Now, DTST, I have to disagree with you again on this one. The world actually does care about Khalistanis, because you rather cherry-picked facts that don't really support your argument. The French, when you say the French have banned turbans in schools, that's nothing to do with Khalistanis. The French are a secular nation. They've banned hijabs in schools. They've banned any signs of religious articles of faith in schools, because it's a blanket secular ban. It's not directed at Khalistanis, so that doesn't stand up. 72% of Canadians reject Khalistanis. Again, it's a meaningless statistic. 72% of Canadians, what, all Canadians? Or is it 72% of the Sikh community reject Khalistanis? That would be a powerful statistic. I don't think it's supported. But even if 72% of Canadians reject Khalistanis, so what? They're a minority. The Khalistanis are a small community in Canada. Of course, the rest of Canada aren't going to necessarily align with them, because they've got nothing in common with them. So again, it doesn't really. So I think your arguments, you sort of, as I say, you cherry-picked statistics that don't really support your argument. Anyway, but thank you for trying anyways. You keep doing it on a daily basis. We do appreciate it. WHO Panzer, who's both online and, of course, in our comments. Good work to explain why. Keep up the good work. Yes, Dr. Grell, he's a very knowledgeable character. It's always a pleasure to interview him. And I do. There's been a few critical comments actually recently about Dr. Grant, and I reject those, because he's an extraordinary, intelligent guy, and his presentations, they are very detailed. It takes a bit of commitment to watch them, because there's so much information and detail in them, but they are worth watching, because the amount of information that you pick up and learn, the education involved is enormous. As I say, it's a good thing to watch his presentation. So, as you say, the slanted roof, there's one slide talking about fascism. And yeah, that slanted roof, fascism basically exists to suppress. That is essentially what it is there for. And money and power flows upwards. Indeed it does, as it always does. What a system which they call democracy India style. Yeah, democracy India style. I wouldn't call it democracy India style. It's Indian version of democracy, which is very, I wouldn't say it aligns anywhere near to Western democracy. Hobo, what have you just said? Dalits are oppressed, but a majority, not a minority. Exactly. By your logic, no single caste can govern India. They have significant, if not most, political power in India. Well, yeah, but you see, it's nuances. As I think as somebody said in the other show, you say potato, I say potato. Yes, they are demographically the majority, but they have been deliberately marginalized politically, so that they actually, unless they actually all united to vote for a new party that they set up, I don't know, call it the Dalit Party, that's the only way that they could ever actually succeed. But the way that the Indian political system has been structured, as it stands, they have been very cleverly boxed in. And again, I don't really have time to sort of explain that in more detail. But essentially, in fact, watch the podcast. Dr. Grell explains it very well in the podcast. As you say, Sikh Jedi, power should not be decentralized in India. That's the only fair way. Power should be decentralized. Yes, it should. Absolutely. And this is exactly the opposite of what the BJP, read the RSS, are doing. They are deliberately centralizing power into Delhi, so that whatever Delhi says, in other words, whatever the RSS says, is imposed upon all the regions. In other words, it's like the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was governed by Moscow. So even if you were in an Eastern Europe country, whichever one, Hungary or Czechoslovakia or Poland, whatever was said in Moscow became law in your country. And that didn't work, obviously. Eventually, it fell because you can't do that. And the same thing's going to happen in India. You can try to control India centrally from Delhi, but all you're going to do there, ironically, is you're just going to fragment India, because all the regions are going to say, because they're already complaining. You only need to look at the southern states, Karnataka, Kerala. They're already up in arms saying, why are we sending all this money up to Delhi? And all that money is being spent in the cow belt, but none of it's coming back to us. And we're the ones generating it. So you start then centralizing even more decision-making in Delhi, it's just going to get worse. So again, unless the BJP changes course, it's inevitable what's going to happen. So anyway, we must crack on with these comments, because I'm getting sidetracked by lots of interesting comments. Thanks for you guys for all your well, yeah, okay. We have many. As I say, there's lots of nuances at Hobo. We don't have time to talk about it. In fact, maybe what we need to do is try and find an expert on Indian politics and just bring them in. Well, Dr. Grewal. Maybe I'll ask Dr. Grewal to explain in simple terms the situation of why the Dalits are politically boxed in. He has done, actually, but maybe we need to do a specific show to explain to people like Hobo, who are obviously asking this question, and well, you've got your own opinions on it. Anyway, let's move on. So yes, Hobo, by coincidence, Hobo, here you go. You put on thoughtful shows sometimes, but this guy, this was this is one of the critical comments about Dr. Grewal. Come on, Hobo. I don't agree with this. I think, as I said, Dr. Grewal is a very learned person. He's done a huge amount of work and research. And yeah, as I say, you might not like his presentations, but I think, as somebody else said, don't be rude about him. He puts a lot of effort into these things. So, be nice. You're back again. We are Indians, firstly and lastly. Baba Ambedkar. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. All I would say is watch the podcast, because there's a whole debate around Dr. Ambedkar. And actually, one of the questions I didn't ask, I didn't mean to ask Dr. Grewal, maybe I'll ask this on another occasion. Is Dr. Ambedkar a good guy or a bad guy? It's a very simple question, but it's a very hard one to answer, because in some ways he did some very, very good work for not just India and Indians, but actually also even for the Sikh community, for the Punjabis. But he also did some very bad work. The question is, what were his intentions? And I think his intentions were genuine. He just didn't necessarily get it right. And the consequences of getting it wrong literally ended in lots and lots of death. So again, it's hard to make that judgment. Rajesh Kumar, hello to you. Thank you for joining us. Nice to see you online. Welcome to the show. Okay. So TC, you had a pop back on that one. I'll leave TC to answer that one in the comments. What else have we got? Rajat Singh, British transfer colony under USA again, and balkanization of India soon. New chapter world. Yeah, again, it really comes back to the same old thing. How long is India going to survive in its current form? Because, as you rightly said, the British transferred this artificial construct that is India, this colony that it literally brought together by brute force, nothing else. It was brute force that created India that is India today. And it has been held together artificially, essentially by brute force, not quite as much as violence as the British Empire. But again, don't forget, the British Empire kept it together not through violence, but through very, very clever tactics. It brought it together through violence, but then it maintained it as a colony just through the sheer implied threat of violence. And that essentially is what India is doing today. It's poured 500,000 troops into J&K. So it keeps the peace by implied violence. You step out of line and we'll pour 500,000 troops into your state. We'll declare presidential rule, etc. So again, you don't need day-to-day violence to maintain essentially an implied violent control over a colony. And that is why India, I believe, and many others believe, has a very questionable future. In other words, it is likely that binding force of brutality that keeps India together today is one day going to snap. And there's nothing they'll be able to do about it. Sikh Jedi, what do you said? I like your India of the United States of India. Yes, absolutely. I think that would actually keep India together. I like your idea. Yeah, this actually, in fact, this is something we've discussed a few times in the past. I think even when I interviewed, was it Gunter Falinger, that Austrian politician? Gosh, that must be 2 years ago now. He actually had the same idea as well. There is this sort of idea that India would operate better in following almost the European Union model. It is a federation of independent countries, independent states that all have their own sovereignty. Well, the EU doesn't necessarily follow that, but the concept in simple terms is all the parts, the regions of India have their own sovereignty. They are autonomous. They make their own governance decisions. They operate on their own, autonomously, commercially, economically, everything. But they all cooperate and coordinate, and they all speak as a united federal voice on the world stage when it suits them. But at the same time, they can also speak individually. So I agree. I think, Sikh Jedi, I think it is. It's a great idea. The United States of India, I think, is possibly one definite future. But that will, of course, include the sovereign state of Khalistan. So we'll see. Gosh, yes, we're over time, so I'm going to have to zip through these. DTST, sorry, I can't talk about this. We've run out of time. Gabon Grau with his daily Sat Sri Akal. Thank you for that. And WHO Panzer again. This is which Dr. G illustrated should be taught in schools and colleges. Yes, exactly. This is actually a great response to the hobos critical comment. Actually, if you listen to what he says, it's good stuff. It really is good stuff. It's the sort of stuff that you could actually learn in school. So. Yeah, thank you for that comment. TC, hard work is appreciated. Carry on the good work. I think he will carry on as long as he can physically speak, will Dr. Greywell say. And WHO Panzer wades in likewise. Oh, yeah, again, the comment about fascism. Safety muffins with the daily ice creams. Congratulations. Surinder Basi, Vaiguruji, and Mangal Singh, Khalistan Zindabad. Oh, DTST, of course, has got a response to that. And Gurbaj Singh. Vahiguruji ka Khalsa, oh, hello, Vahiguruji ka Fateh, Khalistan Zindabad, and the final sign-off goes to Murgi Vlogs Rinku, who says Khalistan Zindabad, 100%, and of course, Punjab solution, Khalistan any. In other words, yes, of course, by a strange coincidence, we have actually arrived at the same answer, the same conclusion that we always reach by a weird coincidence on every show, that the only answer to India's future, and certainly Punjab's future, and the Sikh community's future, has to be Khalistan. It is the ability to be the master of your own affairs, to stand on your own sovereign soil, to have the ability of wearing a Khalistan FA, for example, shirt of a nation that has a geographical boundary, that you can actually stand on your own country's turf, which will be a wonderful thing to aspire to. And one day it is going to happen, as I keep saying. But anyway, we're over time. Must wrap up now. Do keep an eye out for my show tomorrow. It's pre-recorded. We're not live tomorrow, sadly. It is pre-recorded, but it'll be uploaded probably sometime tomorrow morning. So keep an eye out for that. Tomorrow morning, UK time. Keep an eye out for that. That's it for today, though. Thank you guys for being online. It's great to see all of you who've joined us live. Much appreciated. As I say, it's always really nice if you make the effort to be online and see your comments. And thank you to you guys, even Hobo, and those who criticise or are critical or disagree with us. I very, very much welcome you always to the show. It's always nice to have a different opinion on the show. It's all very well being in an echo chamber where we all agree on the same things, but it's really especially nice to see you guys who don't agree with us, because your opinion is just as valid as ours. It's always nice to have a debate. And what I would say, just to warn some of you guys, please keep it polite. I think one or two conversations have got a little heated. So remember, remain polite, remain respectful, even if you're on different sides of the argument and discussion. But otherwise, it's always great to see you guys. Thanks for all your comments. Don't forget to put your comments below this video as well, once it's uploaded and live, whatever, on YouTube as well. Not just live. As I say, I do appreciate comments after this show is up on YouTube. So then I've got, obviously, comments to talk about in this section of the show. But that is it for now. Rajesh Kumar has a Khalsa and a huge amount of love spread to all of us, to the great Sikh community family and all those outside. Much appreciated. Do keep your comments coming in. Don't forget, you can message me directly at message@satlogetv.com. Anything you'd like to tell me about. Of course, I need you guys. Don't forget to feed me the information, things that are happening, particularly on Friday in the Punjab. If you know what's happening, if you take photos, take video, even better, send me whatever you've got. Much appreciated. But that's it. Let me know your thoughts. Have a great night, guys. I will, God willing, see you uploaded tomorrow. Have a great one.